How do fangirls find the balance between your parasocial relationship to your faves, but also being grounded in reality and realizing that we don't really ever know these people? We also have to ask, what does patriarchy have to do with it? And how we can connect that to so many things between the fangirl spaces through patriarchy and how it shows up just in the world generally. This is going to be a part 2, sort of, from my previous ramble about deconstructing patriarchy as a fangirl, and I have a lot of things I would like to discuss today. Parasocial relationships can happen with literally anyone. It doesn't have to be someone who is technically a celebrity, because as we see with the rise of social media, random ass people on the internet who do not have fame also experience people having parasocial relationships with them. So because this is a part 2, we are mostly speaking about celebrity men, but know that a lot of these things resonate as a whole, and there's just so much that to get into, we won't possibly do it all today, which is why I'm specifically talking about celebrity men, how do we balance decentering men and not upholding patriarchy, but also as we are engaging in fan spaces, about celebrity men at the end of the day. So the last episode, I started off by saying that patriarchy primes fangirls to be dismissive, okay? And this is not by surprise. There's a reason that we need to keep people, everybody, not just women specifically, but this happens for everybody, to be dismissive to bad behaviors, things that are being said, not being able to recognize when we see these things in real life. The patriarchy benefits from all of that. And we know this as we see throughout culture, the way that men are never held accountable. Now, the people in my comments, let me tell you, I don't know what happened. Like, I was hoping to get some fangirl insight into this. As people get older and they start to recognize, maybe I don't have the healthiest relationship, with these celebrities, and just kind of as you mature, you start to be like, what I did at 18 probably wouldn't do now. And it doesn't have to be an extreme thing. It's just like you notice how the level of your parasocial relationships change as you get older. Like, you still have an attachment, but it works very differently. As I hope, your 30-year-old brain does not work the same as your 18-year-old brain, okay? Now, to just go back to what I was saying before, the men were mad. The men were mad. Patriarchy doesn't exist to them. Women need to take accountability according to the men. And here's the thing. Everybody needs to take accountability. Now, I don't entertain men who don't understand what the patriarchy is and how that works. This is not a first page. If this is your first introduction to it, mine's not going to be an introduction to it. You already kind of have to have a basis before you interact with my content. That's just going to be how it is. I like to frame everything in the best way I can when I am intentionally trying to put together these things. But also, I do recognize I'm not the one to start your journey with. I'm just not. And men be crazy. I don't understand, and as we know, will never make sense. If you don't like something, if you don't want to see a woman talk about deconstructing patriarchy, you don't think it exists, you think that women are actually need to hey, by the way, can I talk today? Hey, will you let me speak for this moment? Hey, imagine if I could talk. They want women to be held accountable, but they never hold themselves as men or the men in their lives accountable. So, you know what? It's not something that I need to make sense of, because crazy men be crazy. My overall thought is, why are you, and maybe this got sent to their For You page, so it is what it is. Why are you, if you don't like hearing that, interacting with that content? Because if I see something come on my For You page and I go, that's not for me, I just scroll. But not everyone can relate to that. Not everyone can relate to that. I also think there are some hard truths in acknowledging a lot of things as we are deconstructing patriarchy. And a lot of people don't like to live in that discomfort. They don't like to acknowledge where they've been bad at things and what they've done to improve. So I see how people are defensive. At some point, we just gotta go, guys, we gotta fucking tackle this though. Because it's actually getting stupid how long this has existed. We gotta do something about it. Don't you want to do something about it? Don't you? Anyways, I would like to. So the best way I can do that is to try to share my thoughts with other people on how I try to actively do this in my day-to-day, because patriarchy has existed since a long ass time, okay? And it would be silly to think that it does not affect us, no matter how much we know, right? Because there's always room to learn. There's always insidious ways that everything creeps in that we don't even recognize, right? And that's why it's so important to just keep an open conversation with people and think about it, especially in fangirl spaces, because listen, it's not just about, or maybe it's all about centering men too, but like there's also a lot of misogyny in fan spaces too. And I'm not just talking about the ones that come from men, I'm talking about women and slut shaming, and I think like this weird trots. Sorry, I just haven't heard that word in so long. Trots. Where did I come up with trots? What are we, a horse? It goes into like this, like, hey, like you are obsessed with this person, you are jealous, fans being jealous over interactions, etc., etc. That gets us into a misogyny level within a space where we want to be supporting each other, we want to be uplifting each other, and that doesn't always happen in fan spaces. So there's so many insidious ways the patriarchy creeps in on us. And anyway, that's my point about what I wanted to talk about today. I just wanted to mention that, yeah, I was getting so many horrible comments from men. And I also find it funny that people think that their comment's gonna stay up. Because maybe sometimes I do reply. Okay, sometimes it's fun to reply to them. What I learned is, yeah, men just don't like to face any truth, and they don't care to deconstruct anything, and that's really unfortunate for them. It really is. But yeah, none of these people who were coming into my comments were coming in with good faith. They just think they should be able to leave their mad comment and that I should leave it up. Because I was like, ooh, all the men are upset in my comments, and the guy's like, there's literally no comments under your video, by the way. Hey, you got me with that one. But that's because they're blocked. And then he called me a misandrist. Which at the end of the day, who the fuck cares at this point? You know what I mean? I know what I'm talking about. But if you want to meet me on my level, hey, we'll have a conversation. But until then, sorry, you're not welcome in my house. No. You're not welcome on my house. You're not welcome on my street. Okay? So when you're ready to talk about it, when you're ready to face the facts, let me know. But until then, no thank you. There is not freedom of speech in my comment section. If you are being a rude man, you will not exist in my comment section. Or a rude woman, to be fair. A rude anyone is not welcome in my comments, okay? When you're ready to talk about it, let's have a conversation. This is the whole point of why I want to do this, because I want to hear feedback from people and how you have noticed this has shown up in your life. And anyways, with all that being said, with all that rambling going on, let's get into the fucking topic of the day. The patriarchy primes fangirls to be dismissive. This is something I want to elaborate on more. Because here's the thing. At the end of the day, we can understand how things came to be. But it is up to us to stop those cycles. And it can be difficult. I feel like it's so easy to say, stop doing this. I do apologize if I'm looking at myself too much. And also I have my iPad to the side for my notes. So if you see the lights go in and out, I feel like that's just my iPad. I don't know if it's actually affecting anything. Just warning for the people watching. Nevertheless, it is up to stop these cycles. And it's hard. There are so many insidious ways that this creeps into our daily lives that we have not even figured out yet. Okay? As much as we know, there's always more to learn. So when I think about this, we all have to at some point acknowledge, okay, how are we going to break these cycles? And it can be really difficult because there's a lot of it that is so passive, right? Like that's the reason why so many things can go over our head. And, it's not until you become slightly more self-aware, which is a step towards, breaking those cycles, it's a step towards that we can really start doing that. But it's difficult because, like I said, it's just so passive. And it happens in so many ways. Like, once you start, becoming more aware, it almost makes you angrier. Because you're like, what the fuck? What the fuck? You know what I mean? I'm not even talking extremes, right? I'm not talking about saying extreme things. It's just like, oh, wait, no, that doesn't make sense. Just kind of correcting yourself in the moment. Be like, no. Why is that? No, if you think about it more, that doesn't make sense. So many ways it comes up that are just so casual and passive. That is really frustrating. But we gotta do something about it. And I think the frustrating part with anything, with changing how you think, challenging thoughts, you may have been taught, that you haven't even realized that you have, that have really stuck to your brain and you gotta unstick them, right? There is a lot of steps that go into that, and it happens slowly but surely. I feel like it's probably like, the tortoise wins the race at the end of the day, right? You have to just start learning. Learning is the number one for me, because you gotta know. Once you know what to look out for, it's gonna get easier to spot. You know what I mean? And I always say I personally like to watch movies or TV shows too, right? Because it'd be so silly to think that, whether the intention of the storyline in the movie or TV show was to show XYZ is neither here nor there. We live in a patriarchal white supremacist society, right? So it'd be silly to think that these things can't seep into what we're watching. That'd be so silly, right? Just as even the most magical world out of reality world, we can see a lot of themes that come up in real life that we can connect to the greater world, right? Just because it's not rooted in 100% reality doesn't mean it doesn't show realistic things. So I see this as a fun way to deconstruct. I love a fun moment because sometimes, listen, deconstructing is going to be challenging. You're really going to have to look within yourself, right? And challenge your thoughts and be like, how do I change that? What do I do about it? And it really is baby steps, and it really is becoming more self-aware and then being like, okay, now what do I do? And I think the second step can be frustrating because you may recognize when you're repeating those patterns, right? And then it's like, okay, how do I break this, right? And sometimes breaking it is not going to be fun. Sometimes breaking it is not going to be fun, right? Because if it was easy, wouldn't more people have done it by now? If it was that easy? If it was that easy to just switch and be like, okay, I'm not going to do it. You know what I mean? It's hard to, and especially in this world where people don't want to look at that, it's hard to be the only one in the room doing something about it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, in middle school where maybe someone bullies a kid, right? And no one's speaking up because everybody feels weird about it. They don't want to be the one to stand up, right? But if one person stands up to the bully, maybe other people will follow suit, right? So I am a big believer in, just having the courage to try, right? Clock it within yourself and you can clock it elsewhere. And then maybe you'll even inspire other people to clock it with you. I feel like that was a really silly analogy, but I'm sure everybody got the sentiment on that. So this parasocial behavior that we see, right? It's kind of weird because I think it has levels. I actually saw a TikTok and it was really interesting. Like, oh, I don't have a parasocial relationship with these idols. And I thought that was funny that they said that because I think, which is very interesting. It's good to have a healthier relationship with the people that you are a big fan of. Don't get me wrong. But I think we almost see the term parasocial, and I would love to hear everybody else's opinion on this, and think the worst of the worst, right? We think like, I'm gonna say like Lifetime movie Cuckoo Bananas, right? We're talking to people who follow them everywhere they go, who live in this delusional world. There's a funny example I'm thinking of, but I'm not even gonna get into it. Where people like live in this deluded world, but they're like, no, that's gonna be me. That's gonna be me though, right? So unhealthy to, I don't know. Can a relationship to a celebrity or TV character ever be healthy? I don't know. That's a really open-ended question that I don't have an answer to. I wonder that from time to time. Can it be? I don't know. It's something to ponder. It's something to ponder. But the different levels that people take it to, right? As opposed to just consuming the content, supporting it, maybe showing up to a show, if it's an artist or theater, and they move along with their day, maybe putting their posters up. There's different levels. There's different levels of the parasocialness that everyone has to each other online. And not even just famous people, like just day-to-day people as well, especially, since, and it sounds silly, but back in my day, I actually lived in a time where YouTube didn't exist. So even like YouTube culture, finding people who did daily vlogs before these people kind of had YouTube fame, like it's actually so interesting, right? The different ways. And I am so curious, and I haven't done as much research into this, but like the before social media of it all, like I am so curious about the fangirl life before that. And we know Beatlemania, so they were cuckoo bananas for those guys. So I don't know. I don't know, guys. It's just interesting. I'd love to do some more research into that another time. But anyways, as a fangirl, we adore these people that we like, right? They bring a comfort to us. You know, their work we adore, the people sometimes we adore. And like I said, we love the music, we buy the albums, we go to the movies, we watch the show, all these things that fangirls do to, you know, support their favorite people. And I think there is an element of that, of entertainment, that is a bit dehumanizing in a way. That's why I say, can there be a healthy relationship as a fangirl to an artist? Or does entertainment 100% set us up to dehumanize, whether we realize it or not? Because it really all goes back to dehumanization at the end of the day. And I say this because one of the things I noted in my first episode was that, you know, there is an element to, we don't know these people 100%, right? No matter how much content they have out there, for us to get to know more of them, right? It is curated. They only show so much. You don't see these people in the day-to-day, right? Like in the way that your family or friends would see you, you know, as you as a person, right? They don't see you pick. Actually, that's a lie. I was gonna say, the average person doesn't see their favorite picking a wedgie. Actually, that's a lie. I've seen someone pick a wedgie. Not live, but anyway. Why'd I pick that, by the way? I don't know. I was trying to pick something so humanizing. Picking a wedgie. I'm pretty sure I saw a video of, like, you know, picking a wedgie. Don't ask about that. I don't know. It came up on TikTok. I don't know what you want me to say. But there is an element where we will not 100% know, right? Because with anything, even for show, even me, right? As anyone shows up on camera, right? In a spotlight, speaking above a crowd, right? You're not getting all of them. Couldn't be possible, right? You're also getting an exaggerated version of them, right? And we can't be on 24/7. What is this, a Truman Show? You know what I mean? We're not being watched 24/7, I hope. I actually say this, and just about the Truman Show, is like, if my life was the Truman Show, like, you would get a lot of clips of me, like, randomly dancing around my house and singing along, and it'd be really embarrassing, but, like, that is real. Like, this is real, this is me, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? And I think about that. But you know what I mean? Like, life's too short to be afraid someone's watching you. Is that what I was trying to say? I also wonder, can ghosts have parasocial relationships to the people they haunt? But that's neither here nor there today. That's just like a real, I'm always going to go on a side tangent of some sorts that really is not relevant to what we're saying. But hey, posing the question, I'd like to hear. Sound off in the comments if you watch this. We can't 100% know these people, right? And there's a manufactured closeness, right? And it's weird. It's almost like it has to be that way. I will say, even people who don't do that much press, right? And don't have a lot of content around them, I say, like, probably more likely with movie stars, just because, you know, I feel like other people have to do more promo. Sorry if I'm kicking my camera. I just realized, you know, I'm not stomping my feet. I'm wiggling my legs and it's moving the camera. You know, I feel like movie stars do kind of like, can get away with doing less because they just show up and do their job, and maybe they do a few interviews, you know, when, you know, their movie's coming out, and that's kind of it. But even then, there's this entitlement to know that if you step into fame, whether intentionally or not, that people feel an entitlement to know everything about you, an entitlement to you all the time, instead of thinking about it as a job, in which it is, right? It's kind of hard when your job is your personality, I imagine, because people love you for your personality. And it's not just, I don't know, I'm trying to think. You're not my cashier at Kohl's. Like, when I see you now and then, I don't even shop at Kohl's. Shake your ass for some Kohl's cash, everybody. You know, you see that person, you always have a nice conversation, you move on with your day. Why did I pick a Kohl's associate again? God only knows. I don't know why I thought of that. You know, but I just say that in the way you see people doing their job, and you're like, hey, they're cool. They're my fun little interaction of the day. Just good people you interact with by the day to day, right? And you move on with your life. But celebrity is different. You're not standing your Kohl's employee. Is this even comparable? This is a working thought. This wasn't in my notes. This is a working thought as I'm chatting here, and I don't know if it is comparable at all. Now that I've gone through with it, I'm gonna keep it in because to me it's funny. But you know, in a traditional job sense, right? It's not your 9 to 5. It's not, you know, any other type of job. So, and how could you have, I don't know. I don't even know at this point. It made more sense when I started speaking, and as I've spoke more, it's made less sense. But I think everybody's kind of getting the idea, I would hope, right? Like, it's a different sort of job when your job is your personality, right? Or even just thinking like, maybe a better idea would be maybe your waitress, right? In the way that in America, you know, you do have to exude this friendliness because you're hoping that people give you tips, right? Like, you kind of have to have like a better performance, right? Because maybe if your table just like, wow, she's really mean, she's not doing nothing, like, they don't want to give you tips for some reason, which would be rude as fuck. It's crazy that they underpay waitresses and they have to rely on tips, but that's another conversation for a different day. But you know what I mean? Like, when your job requires your performance for people, right? And people feel this entitlement, no matter like the level they know you, right? Because people also feel this about celebrities that they don't care about, right? In the way that's like, if someone saw Ed Sheeran in the street, but they weren't a big Ed Sheeran fangirl, do those exist? And I'm really not trying to like be mean or anything. I'm just like, I just never hear about the Ed Sheeran fangirls, or maybe they're more normal than other people. I don't know. I can't answer to that. Right? They're like, oh, here's a famous person, I want to get a picture with them just because I could be like, oh, I met Ed Sheeran. But like, even if you don't care about him, you know what I mean? It's interesting, and it's much more complicated than any other kind of sector of work, I feel. So it's very weird because this parasocial relationship exists on so many different levels, you know, from like just acknowledging that, hey, that's a cool person, I would want a picture with them even if I don't care about them, to obviously the crazy level of obsession that some people are at, unfortunately. So it happens in so many ways. It's just so fascinating to think about. And that's why it's like kind of, to me, it's like a complex topic, because it's like, I don't even know. I'd love to know more about like fame before social media. And I definitely am going to have to do research on that, as I've said before. But, you know, it's just so complex. It's really weird to think about it. But nevertheless, we put these famous people on a weird pedestal because of the fact that they're famous and we know of them, right? No matter what degree, you know that person's famous. We know some information to a degree, right? Whether you know, just know who he is, you know his song, or you know a lot about them personally, that there's this manufactured closeness, right? The more information we collect, the closer we feel to them, right? And as I said before, we project who we think they are onto them. Whatever pieces of their personalities or things that we like, we take that and we go, oh, they must be like this, right? And it's not that celebrities can't show us time to time who they are, or through their actions who they are, that we see that. But it's just very interesting in the way that everyone is guilty of projecting an idea of who someone is onto someone. And that doesn't just happen with famous people. It's just so fascinating. People are fascinating. That's all I have to say about that. I also think, you know, the closer connection we have to something, right? The idea of letting go gets harder, right? And it's like, when do you let go? When you know certain information. And the thing about life is, we can only live it. We can only live it and take things as they come, right? And you have to trust yourself to know what you want to do and what aligns with you, to decide if things are still right for you or not, right? Whether you try something new, whether it be letting go of something, you know, this is just life, right? We can't predict the bad things that will happen. We can't predict the good things that will happen, right? Because things surprise us either way, right? And that's just going through life. And that is what it is. But because we kind of project this, or even with celebrity men, and I say it like as fangirls, you go, oh, that's a green flag, man, right? And so I imagine when we hear something that goes, oh, that was weird, right? Either, no matter what level it is, right? That was weird. He said that. Or I heard he did this. Or a big story comes out, right? People are now fighting, damn, how do I make sense of the fact that someone who has been such a big impact in my life, right? Something I adore, that has done so good for me and I feel like has been so good as a person, right? Do or say something like that. Holding the nuance, right? That's a tough thing to do. And so I imagine that's part of the reason people have trouble acknowledging the real issues in the world, right? Being able to hold the nuance, and we will get to more of that. Also, people just are dismissive of behaviors because we haven't really taken a look at all the insidious ways that the patriarchy creeps in on us. And like I said earlier, it is up to us to try to learn more. You know, listen to people who maybe have lived more life than you, right? Because one thing I mentioned in my previous episode was that, you know, it's so amazing that we have TikTok just for people to share their stories in the way that, like, you know what, when I was younger, maybe I got married and I thought it was supposed to be this way. And as I lived life, I noticed I was becoming more miserable and this is not what I wanted. And I went, dang, is this really it? Or have I been taught that this is what I have to deal with? And instead, at some point, I got to say, when am I going to live for myself? And then they get that divorce and they live a beautiful life afterwards. Maybe they find someone that, you know, fits their, you know, standards and they get to live a beautiful life with them. Or maybe they're single for the rest of their life and they just get to have like a girls trip and then the fun auntie. You know what I mean? It's so wonderful to hear from women who have lived that life, especially because, you know, I feel like our generation now is really doing finally the big unpacking in a way that our parents just weren't. Right? And it's not to say that there's zero people, but it's just the part that, like, I feel like more people now are becoming more consciously aware of these issues and wanting to break those cycles. And that comes with a lot of accepting that, you know, these societal standards for how life should be lived, the milestones you hit and at what time, don't actually have to be true, right? Life's what you make it, so let's make it rock, okay? One of my favorite philosophers, Hannah Montana, okay? Modern philosopher of our time, okay? Listen to fucking Hannah Montana. Lots to be said on that. And I think there is an element that people struggle with when we talk about being dismissive, that it's kind of like we want everybody to be on the same page, right? But then people get mad when they're not included, right? Because the one thing we also need to hold the nuance of is that if you're not ready to break those cycles and you keep acting in ways that is not helpful to everybody, do you think you're going to be welcomed in with open arms if you are not aware about how we uphold these harmful things, right? It doesn't really make you as good of a community member if you cannot do those things, right? And these are all skills that we can build and we can try to be better on and earn the trust back, but we need to be ready to do that. Not everybody is, and not everybody is. And so one of the examples, you know, in the fangirl space, we see this is we see a man do something wrong or say something wrong, and people need to call into accountability. And sometimes these offenses are very serious, right? And they don't want to acknowledge them. Everyone is a human being with flaws who will make mistakes, and some of those mistakes are not really going to be ones that they can come back from, right? Or they're going to lose fans over. Our inability to humanize these people, right? Because in a way, like projecting, it's just interesting, and the insidious ways to humanization creeps into our everyday lives, is projecting what we love about someone onto someone also a form of dehumanization? That's just a question. That's an open-ended question that I would love to everybody to think about, you know, because if we are not accepting people for what we see, are we also dehumanizing them by giving them traits that they either may not have at all, or, you know, just not acknowledging that they are human and they can make mistakes and they have to be the ones to own up to that. But also, here's the thing. If you support someone who has done something bad, people are gonna look at you bad, right? It's kind of like men in real life, right? If they hear one of the friends in their group has done something harmful to a woman, right? And they stay friends with them, right? And they don't even do anything as try to talk to them. They don't cut them out when they're being unsafe to women. Are they ever facing consequences, right? Or are you just the thing of the patriarchy? We protect men who do harmful things. And anyone can do harmful things. But the point is, what are we doing that we're dismissing this behavior, that there's no consequences to it, and we're just letting it go unchecked, right? Unchecked bad behavior only leads to worse things. We know this. If you open a history book, we see this play out time and time again. So when there's no consequences, why would anyone change? Why would anyone change? You know what I mean? And what do those consequences look like? And when we can't get real consequences, like I said, whatever that may look like, what does it look like how we change how we interact with things, right? Because there's an accountability upon everyone, right? To call something out, to acknowledge, okay, is this going to be seen out? Is that person going to have to face their consequence? And also, how am I going to interact moving forward? It really concerns me the level of delusion people have when they cannot accept facts as facts, right? Because it's difficult to accept and hold the nuance that maybe someone you were a fan of has done something bad. And it is something that you are required to rethink, right? You are required to rethink it. You may not like it. You don't have to like it. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be comfortable. But you have to do it because that's life. Why would you compromise your values for anyone? Especially for a celebrity, man. If you say this person, this type of person should not be supported, an abuser should not be supported, right? In your day-to-day, but then you go to a Chris Brown concert, you cannot be trusted. You can't support an abuser, but also say, no, all abusers need to pay for their they need to pay their consequences. But also support an abuser. Do you know what I mean? And these are the ways in which I say this in the way patriarchy primes women to be dismissive too, right? In the ways that everyone works together to uphold the patriarchy. Men do it more, right? And we see more women hold accountable women than we do men hold men accountable. And that's the fucking issue. When are we going to do something about that? The men are the only ones can fix their shit. You know what I mean? So let's fix our shit at the end of the day. That's the least we can do. That's the least we can do. And, as frustrating as it can be at times, it's so important. And I really do think deconstructing these ideas really does lead to us living a happier life, right? It's frustrating that we exist in a system that still upholds these terrible things, right? But what can we do? We can do our best to try to do something about it, right? Because if we do nothing, nothing changes. You know what I mean? If we do nothing, nothing changes. So we got to do something. So I just want to take a second to talk about what does accountability look like, right? And it's tough when we talk about celebrities because there's only an extent to what we can hold people accountable for, right? And what does that look like? And what are people doing now that isn't entirely helpful, right? I feel like now people just want to hound and harass the people who have done something wrong. And this can be on different extents. And I can understand the frustration of when enough people as time has gone by don't face consequences. I imagine the people who do that start coming from a place of, how is anything gonna ever change if we don't do something about it, right? That might not be the right thing to do, but it can be frustrating seeing people not face the consequences and not have to think, right? There are many people who do bad things who go on to live happy lives and they never think about the bad things they do. And that's an uncomfortable thing to acknowledge. So first I want to talk about, what does accountability look like when we talk to celebrities, right? Because there's accountability that can't exist for celebrities, right? Because we can't 100% call it in the same way we could with people in our own lives. And there's only a degree to everything at the end of the day. Example A, someone is called out, they apologize, they do the work to learn, it doesn't happen again. Maybe they can even openly speak about their mistakes. To me, this is the best case scenario, right? It is a wonderful thing. And I think, to make a mistake publicly can be embarrassing, right? Because the things I talk about, they range from, little to very big serious, right? But when we just talk about the average amount of mistakes that, I see celebrities make, right? Before we get to the extremes, it's a lot of we all have growing to do, and people are reflecting that you have more to do. And so are you going to do something about it and learn? And can you also, there's really a respect I have for people who can really be like, yeah, I wasn't great at this, and I'm still learning how to be better at this, but I want to do better. As opposed to people who don't want to sit and think about it for a second. You know what I mean? We want reflection. Reflection is a wonderful thing. There is this kind of concept, you know, I like to talk about with accountability because, you know, there's this thing where we like to think change is bad, right? People always say change is good, you just got to be brave enough to do it. And it's all true, it's all true. But I think there's this element of change that, you know, when it comes to like personal things, I feel like people, because they have a view of who you are, as you're changing, they can be like, oh, well, you used to do this. And I go, right. And I wanted to get better, and so now I'm trying to do better now. The whole point is, if there's something bad that you want to improve on, then you should be allowed to improve on it, right? And obviously there's nuance to that conversation as well. But you can't be afraid to change because people are going to be like, well, you used to do this, right? And I want to do better, so I'm trying to do differently now. Trying to learn and do better. Because you're supposed to change. It would be silly to think that we don't change over our lifetime, right? It's one of those like weird things. It's like somehow we become ourselves more, right? We become more connected with ourselves, or they say connect with your, you know, 8-year-old self, right? And as much as we stay the same, we also change. You know what I mean? So it's that weird thing, holding the two things in, you know, in our hands at the same time, that I think can be hard for people to understand. But it's a wonderful thing. It's the beauty of life. I would hope that, you know, the really parts that I cherish about myself stay the same, and that I always continue to grow as a person, because we should be growing till we die. There's always more to learn. There's always more to learn, right? And that is good change. That's good change. Scenario number 2. Someone's called out. They give a half-assed note-app apology. We are all familiar with, right? There are fans who are going to want to stay. There are fans who are going to be like, yeah, you thought this was an apology? This sucked, by the way, right? And there's also a lot of things with when people do or say something wrong that they want it hidden, right? Like I said, respect for people who can speak up about learning from their mistakes and do differently, okay? Mistakes are embarrassing, right? And it makes sense that we wish it was, especially on famous people, right? It's right in front of so many people, right? So it's embarrassing. People know that. People who Google it and see that about you, even if you've done the work to change, right? That's very true. It's very true, right? And that can be embarrassing. That's why I say I have respect for people who can talk about it. Actually, I don't really know the context of this, so BTS Army, maybe you can give me some more context. But I saw a video of Namjoon from BTS talking about how he got, you know, the criticism that some of his old lyrics were misogynistic, so now he, you know, works with people, I forget, really great story, Marissa, I can't remember the details. He works with like a board, a women's studies board of some sort, to learn more and to be like, oh hey, yeah, no, that's not good at all. So I was like, oh, that's very interesting that he spoke about that. But I think that's good for people to speak about that. I don't know the full context of that, but I did see that video recently and I was like, oh, okay. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has those days, right? Nobody's perfect. I gotta work it again and again till I get it right. Once again, words from our modern day philosopher, Hannah motherfucking Montana, okay? Exactly. And scenario C. The celebrity ignores call-outs and does nothing differently. Fans don't care to see the wrong and still show support. Because at the end of the day, there's only so much we can do, right? We can say, hey, this isn't right. And people's approach will probably depend on how serious whatever it is may be, right? And honestly, if someone comes to you kindly about something, honestly appreciate that, because I do believe you don't have to come to someone kindly when there's a big thing going on. You know what I mean? Especially when it's like, sometimes it's like you get to an age where you're like, you don't already know this? We should know this. We should know this, right? You should be able to clock when something is racist, when something is misogynistic. So when people can't recognize those things, I just go, you know what I mean? There are so many insidious ways those things creep into our lives. And I feel like when people miss the obvious stuff, I'm like, is everyone okay? We gotta be more clocked into what's going on. I'm concerned. I know everybody's got a lot going on in their lives, but we really gotta be on top of these things sometimes. I really do believe that. You know, so honestly be glad if someone comes to you kindly. But I think fans have a right to be upset when someone says something wrong. You know what I mean? But where I say this accountability comes into is you can only say so much. At some point, we've talked about it, we can speak on it, what's the issue? How would this be rectified if there, is a solution for that? And at the end of the day, whether they apologize or not, you just have to decide, okay, do I believe this person? Am I gonna wait and see? Do they mean what they say? Or am I going, I'm uncomfortable now, so I've gotta peace out, right? That's all we can do. That's our level, I say, of self-accountability, right? Because it's kind of like, I say this in the way that they describe boundaries, right? Boundaries are something that you decide, and you can tell people like, hey, if you do this, I'll leave. But if they do it and you don't leave, you're not upholding the boundary that you set for yourself, right? You know what I mean? So you got to keep that in mind. It's kind of, I say like that as well, right? At some point you got to ask yourself, okay, I don't like this. This apology wasn't good enough for me, or I don't see, or I'm 100% uncomfortable now and I don't feel like moving forward. Then you just got to back out. You know what I mean? It is what it is, and you have to accept the grief in that, right? And there is a lot of grief in everything that we do. And I say grief is a big thing, part of the reason, right? Other than the fact that we've been socialized to dismiss these things, right? But I think grief is a big reason that some people don't want to, right? Because if you accept the grief, someone, a celebrity or something, wasn't who you thought they were, or they weren't a good person, right? And then you also have to battle the fact you have really great memories about them, right? Or even that, like I say, like my emotional support boy band, we had this guy still to this day denying that Israel is committing a genocide on Palestine. To me, when I saw this language, I was sick to my stomach, and I cannot, like, it was a switch for me. It was a switch for me, because how could you say that? That makes me sick to my stomach, right? How do you not see? How do you not question after seeing the horrors that had been played out on the screen for us to see? Where is your humanity? How have you been so disconnected from your humanity? The fact that we actively are, socialized to dehumanize, right? And once again, we're not good at talking about grief or dealing with it. That all combines in the fact that, damn, that's how people stay and uphold these oppressive systems, right? Because when I saw one of the band members say that shit, it was a switch for me. I'm like, I'm sickened by this. I look at him and I don't see the person I used to see. And that's sad. Big part of my life. And I'm very grateful for our time. Loved Big Time Rush. But I can't say I'm pro-Palestinian and then go and actively give money to a man who is using his platform to try to convince people that Israel isn't committing a genocide, when we very much see that before our eyes, right? And for some people, it's really fucking annoying that it took this long, right? That we see, forgive me for not knowing the proper terms, but they're at a level 5 starvation. And now people who were pro-Israel a couple years ago are now saying, oh, wait, guys, no, we have taken this too far, right? And the truth is, when do you say enough is enough? Do you say it when you see all the signs of it happening right before your eyes and you go, no, that's not happening. They need to be able to do their thing, right? And they wait until it's gotten worse? Or do you stop it before it happens? The idea of breaking these cycles, right? We're circling it back. Breaking these cycles is to stop it before the bad happens. Not till the end, not till people are starving. Palestinians have been wiped out. There's an active genocide, right? People are dying. They're human like you and me. They share joy like you and me. And you sat there and you said, and you dehumanized those people by saying they're not facing a genocide. I'm looking at you differently. And I'm looking at the people that associate with you differently. I hope everybody grows and comes around and deconstructs their view, right? And what's accountability look like in this situation? I can't be the one to say, if you've been saying that, I don't know. I don't have the solution for you. And I don't think people are going to want to welcome you back in, to be quite honest. And they shouldn't, because why would you be trusted? You just went online and said these horrible things about Palestinians and are, trying to praise the abuser, right? Have you been so disconnected from your own humanity you can't understand that? That's crazy to me. That's crazy to me. My nostalgia, my emotional attachment boy band will never come before the Palestinians. Is everyone okay? That's what I'm saying. I'm really thinking about it like that, guys. I really am. My nostalgia never would come at the cost of that rhetoric. Never. So when it comes to accountability, all I can say, hey guys, does anyone want to take a look at this? You know, like I said, you're looking around the room, you're like, anybody else have a problem with this? Or is it just me? Maybe it's just me. And maybe I'm onto something that you guys won't realize for another 5 years. I don't know what to tell you. It is what it is. But all I can do, you know, there's nothing that I can do to hold James Maslow accountable. You know what I mean? I'm just here sitting at my home. There's nothing I can do to hold him accountable. So I'm not gonna give money to that man. I'm sorry. You have to ask yourself, if you're letting things be passive, if you're agreeing to disagree on human rights with people, when you had the opportunity to learn, when you could always know more, and you can always change your opinion on something, I am looking at you sideways, because you cannot say you are supportive and also stay friends with people who believe in that. I don't. And it's not to say, let's connect this to the all good, all bad conversation, right? The binary of good and bad. That's what I want to get into, right? But you have to look at the ways that you are upholding these things, right? And if you are still actively upholding these things, and it happens in so many passive ways, in little ways that we don't even recognize, right? How can you be helpful to that cause if you don't even know what that looks like in your day-to-day, right? And you can't even make that sacrifice in your day-to-day, because the reality is, standing up to oppressive systems sometimes it's going to cost you things you like. You don't have to like it. It can be sad. You're allowed to have emotions. But why the fuck would you support that? You are co-signing that behavior by supporting that. You don't have to like that I'm saying that, but I want everybody to sit and think about that. What that actually looks like. Sit and think about it. Is that what you want to do? Does that feel like within your values? It can be hard to acknowledge that. It sucks. I'd like to have fun too. I'd love the Men in Black Mind Eraser to have a fun night at a Big Time Rush show. But my nostalgia does not come at the cost of the rhetoric I have seen James Maslow spew. Spew. I can't talk. Spew. Haven't heard that word in a while. Like, yo, what? Watching this man be so disconnected from his own humanity is truly wild. I'm not fucking afraid to say it. Think about it. Is that who you want to reflect who you are? I want everybody to think about it. Okay? I want everybody to think about that. Because when you look at all of the movements, right, to deconstruct, to rise up against these oppressive systems, right, in whatever way, may that be a big way, or even the small ways in the day-to-day, in the little things that we'd like to change within ourselves, within our homes, within our schools, within our work, within our communities, within our local government, right? And then stepping up to the big government, right? You don't just get to live a peaceful life where everything's fine and dandy, and you get to say, hey guys, this is actually really bad. Can you stop doing that? Hey, you're actually murdering a lot of people. Can you please, hey, could you stop bombing? I don't think that's right. Guys, it's not how that works. It's not how that works. Has any real change been made in the world by being silent? Was any change made in this world by being silent? Was any change made in this world by being afraid to stand up for what you believe in? Ponder it. Ponder it, okay? These are the bigger ways that, I'm talking about in fan spaces, but we can connect this to the world. That's what I want to do here, okay? I want to connect this to the grander things that, the fangirl space is just one part of. The fangirl space is just one part of at the end of the day. So if you stay silent, whether you may believe, and you may have the right idea too, right? A lot of people, like I said earlier, the bully analogy, right? Someone may be bullied and everyone else, even if they think it's wrong, some people don't give a fuck, right? And some people are like, this is really wrong, but I don't want to be the one to speak up, right? The message of High School Musical, if we all work together, right? We embrace our similarities because we're all human and we have similarities at the end of the day. And we embrace our differences. Our differences make us stronger. And when we work together, we're all in this together and we can get something done. Okay? That's the lesson of High School Musical. Do not stick to the status quo. They want you to stick to the status quo because if you do and you're afraid to speak up, then they benefit from that, right? And then we can keep going the way we're going. But do you want to speak out? And then maybe if you speak out, that'll inspire others to speak out. That'll inspire others to think, I'm going to think about that. I'm going to do something about that. You know what? You inspired me to do some deconstructing. So many creators have done that for me. So many. I follow a lot of really great people on TikTok. I'm really thankful. I don't know if you all saw that one TikTok of someone was interviewing people outside of a Chris Brown concert and they were asking like, do you know about this stuff? And some people didn't know, which is like, it's crazy what people don't know, right? It's one of those things that's like, listen, a lot of people are still attending Big Time Rush's tour no matter what. Even if they know, right? They're gonna attend anyways. But, and they're not like, it's not like a Justin Bieber, I say, where it's like, if he does something, somehow everybody's gonna know about it randomly. You know what I mean? Like even my dad would probably say something about it. You know what I mean? Whereas like Big Time Rush, they're not on the radar like that. They never really have been on the radar like that. Do you know what I mean? In a way, so when we hear James saying all this Zionist shit, and Zionism is not Judaism, just to fucking clarify that for a fucking second, right? You're just like, people, I would hope that if more people knew that information, they would act differently. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about that if they don't want to, right? There's nothing I can do about that if they don't want to, But I'm so grateful for the creators, and this is why I say I love people who can talk about deconstructing, because everybody has things that they're deconstructing. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has those days. Sorry, once again, Hannah Montana reference. There are plenty of people who grew up in Jewish communities that were not raised with any sort of Zionism, right? And there are plenty of people who talk about when did they start to question things, the way that things about Israel were being worded and their relationship to the Palestinians were being worded, right? Some people talk about maybe they went on the birthright trip and then they started really seeing the truth and started deconstructing from there. And it is amazing that those people have had TikTok to really open up those conversations, and also in real fucking time, right? Some people have been doing that work for a time now, and sometimes what happened at the end of 2023 was the first time they were sitting with the camera on TikTok and going, I don't know if what I've been told is true. And everybody's telling me that I'm wrong and I shouldn't be thinking this, but this doesn't seem right. You know what I mean? Never be afraid to question. Never be afraid to change your opinion. Never. Do not stick to the fucking status quo, because we're all in this together, okay? High School Musical. Hey, everyone do a rewatch, okay? We need to be learning these lessons again, apparently. Because some people don't know. Some people don't know. But you have to ask, if you're getting to the point where you are supporting someone with bad views, or someone like Chris Brown, like an abuser, over the harm of women, the harm of people, are you okay? You're not. You're not okay. And we need to evaluate that, okay? We need to evaluate that. Does that really stand within your values? Is that what you're looking to do? Think about it. Please think about it. I really urge you to really reconsider. The point is reconsidering. And I understand that people don't really change things. You can't shame people into change. But sometimes some people should be ashamed by the things. You know what I mean? If you're going to a Chris Brown concert in 2025, you need to be ashamed a little bit. Shame is not supposed to debilitate you. It is supposed to, shame and guilt are supposed to move you towards what you want to do, right? If you feel like, damn, I did this, and I also don't want to uphold abusers, right? So how could your actions, how do you make what you believe in your actions line up together is really the ultimate question, okay? And I want everybody to think about that, because everyone has ways they could be doing better, right? It's not about saying you're wrong, you are the worst person ever. It goes, hey, you did something that's not okay. Do you want to be a better person? Think about all the times, the different lives that someone who just has had one life can live, right? They could have had the worst first years of their life and they turn their life around and they have a beautiful life, right? You can make that change at any time. And that's also one of the things I feel like you learned from High School Musical, not to bring it back, right? You can decide at any time that you want to do something differently. And when you do, your life just becomes so much more beautiful. Was that like a coherent sentence? But you know what I mean? Like Troy decided, you know what? I want to go out for the musical. I'm really enjoying this. And look how stronger his relationship to himself became. Look how stronger his relationship to his girlfriend, to his friends. You know, being able to deconstruct and make a positive change in your life really does make your relationships with yourself and other people stronger. So wouldn't you want to get there? It can be tough, I understand, but isn't that something you want to strive to? If you are doing things that actively dehumanize people and you're dismissive, that's going to lead us nowhere good. Guys, where are we going with that? Nowhere good. So I really think people need to take a look at the different ways that dehumanization can happen throughout the world, because it really does connect to all of the things that we interact with at the end of the day. It really does. And to finally get back to what I wanted to say was this nuance of good and bad. And specifically, if you've read the book Hood Feminism, I think she made a really incredible point on that, was that, you know, when people say racist is bad, right? But they see themselves as good people, right? They say, they may think because they're good, they can never be bad, right? And if racist is bad, that makes them think they could never be racist, right? And that halts people from change. And I thought that was a great way to explain it, in the way that we view it in a very binary way, and that's not healthy. And I say one of my favorite children's book series, A Series of Unfortunate Events, which I didn't read till I was an adult, is an incredible book. Honestly, if you want to just take a moment, have fun, critically think, and read. Because it is a book, this is a series of unfortunate events, right? It is not going to be a happy life for the Baudelaires. But living in the discomfort, knowing that their life isn't going to get any better. They're only experiencing trauma after trauma, right? They're dealing with the grief of so many things throughout life, right? And they're also questioning this idea of good and bad, right? Because they're being harassed by Count Olaf, and they've had opportunities. Well, maybe they could have harmed Count Olaf, but is that the point? Or maybe they don't want to. If they take a step and let's say they killed Count Olaf, would that be crossing a line that they can never come back from, right? This idea of balancing the good and bad, and how good people can do bad things and bad people can do good things, right? I don't know if we get rid of good and bad entirely. That's not a question. That's not something I could answer for you. But what I do like to think of it more of is just kind of like a scale, right? Where you fall on that scale. Even I think about to the show Once Upon a Time, right? Where we have a very clear evil villain and we have, the good hero, right? In the way that they also switch in the show, right? At some point we have Emma and we have Regina, and at some point they kind of do a swap, right? How do we accept that this evil queen has done horrible things, but we also like her? And then she makes, she has character development, she comes into a better person, and then somehow the good person has flopped, I don't know if that was the right word, has turned into the bad person, and is also not doing good things, right? But they're also like, but that's our Emma. But also, you're doing bad things, girl. You need to stop, right? And I say that because, and also watch the show Lucifer. That's also another one, right? But this idea that it has to be a binary, and it's more of a scale, right? And if you want to be more towards the good, what does that look like in your day-to-day life? How can you get farther to the good? And I say the show Lucifer, I don't want to say too many spoilers, but this idea, I don't know the Bible lore of Lucifer, so forgive me, that context is going to be out of here for me because I don't know it. But I thought, someone made a TikTok that said, once we accepted that there was a heaven and hell, we were obviously set up to dehumanize people. And I thought that was a brilliant observation, because I hadn't made that connection before, but I really, really liked it. And I also go, with where the end of the show Lucifer gets, right, does Lucifer go back to hell? And what does, in Lucifer, the hell looks very different. I say it almost seems like a purgatory in a sense. But like I said, I'm not too familiar with the lore of all these things. So like, there is some context I'm sure I'm missing. But this idea of like that people would go through their trauma and they can maybe unlock to go to a different level, and you kind of have to, the idea is like work through your trauma to be better. Can you escape? I don't know. Okay, is that a spoiler? Maybe a little bit, so I do apologize, but it's okay. You'll forget by the time you watch all of it, I promise. You will, I promise. Right? And that's a very interesting thing to think of, right? Because it's hard. And also another thing that you want to read if you're deconstructing, right? We have some reading suggestions, we have some watching suggestions, is Angela Davis, right? Connecting how we dehumanize people and how that has come about throughout history, and also connecting Palestinians to what's going on in the world, and how how we view Palestinians also affects how we view human beings, because they are humans, and connecting that to the terrors of the world. So freedom is a constant struggle. If I'm not mistaken, sorry, I'm looking at my bookshelf at the moment. Woman Racing Class, is that what it is? Yes, Woman Racing Class by Angela Davis. Apparently that gets assigned in like schools, class curriculum. And I will say it was a page turner for me. Like I actually really enjoyed, I took a lot from that book. So don't feel like it's gonna be like a hard read by any means. And Hood Feminism by Mickey Kendall, phenomenal books. So there's some suggestions if you want to tackle kind of laying the groundwork to further understand and make these connections throughout life, because these are all things that are all connected at the end of the day. But it all has to do with holding the nuance of good and bad, right? How do we accept someone we care about, we maybe have had good experiences with, or close to us in some way, whether that be a celebrity or a person, have also said or they've done bad things, right? How do you hold both of those truths? But there's a lot of nuance to life, and that can be difficult for people to think about, right? Because there's so many insidious ways that we dehumanize people, and there's so many ways that we don't want to deal with the grief of dealing with all of this shit, right? So it makes sense that we are a culture who dehumanizes, and we don't want to acknowledge the grief, and we haven't been taught to, and what that looks like. I think people are kind of grasping a better idea now, or at least being more open with it, right? Talking about it more. But if we can't tackle those things, how will we make real change in the world? I think it's something to think about. And there are a lot of incredible people who are ready to do the work more than you and I, who are actually going out there and making a difference. Do you know what I mean? So this is all to spark thought and to get you to think, because I think these are things that, I've heard people talk about that I really, really appreciate, because I love just hearing everyone's insights about, these topics, because there's so many different ways we can connect that throughout the world. And I wanted, obviously I've talked about more worldly things, I feel like, in the last 30 minutes of this episode, but, connecting that to how that shows up in our lives. And I'm a big fangirl of many things, and how that has, evolved over time is very interesting to look at, because I look at how these things affect the different aspects of my life. And I think it's interesting. I just hear less people talk about it. So I also want to speak about it too, because it's interesting. It's interesting to say the least. To say the least, honey, I've been talking for like an hour. And just to briefly go over, entertainment sets us up to dehumanize. Like that was really a thing where it's like, yes, I've accepted that, and I kind of have had that realization before, but I really wanted to sit with it and really think about it for a second. And I'm not going to go into great detail about it, but it's just something to ponder. Like I said earlier in the episode, how do we have a healthy relationship? Is that possible? I don't know. I still need to do more research, into the entertainment of it all, I feel. Like I said, there's a sense of entitlement from fans. Fans feel this manufactured closeness. And even if, the person really does, enjoy their fans, there are fans who don't respect the artist's boundaries, right? Which is so interesting to me. I know Chan from Stray Kids, has spoken on a live recently, like, hey, if you don't do bad things, the staff won't talk to you. But if you do, then, well, what did you expect? He tries to be very polite about it, but honestly, I think they should be able to cuss out. I know they're their fans, but it's like, honestly, if you're acting up, there needs to be consequences for that, okay? But I say that in a way that it also made me think of this, because, when these fans feel they have reached a part of this parasocial relationship that has also has entitlement in it, right? Like, I am entitled to your time. I'm entitled. You're not allowed to say, no, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't want to do that. Or, you know, if we're out and about, just let me be, respect my space, you know, or if you do see me out and about, here's how you could approach, here's what not to do, right? Even when they lay the groundwork, people don't want to listen, which is so interesting to me. And I do wonder if some of that is just like, is it because people are so young? Because I think about my relationship to that stuff when I was younger, and it was different than it is now. I definitely wasn't like as that crazy as someone I saw on TikTok was like, yes, I'm walking past my old stomping grounds. Here's where I used to climb the fence for One Direction. Now, I would never climb a fence for anybody. And I would never climb a fence, period. I can't even get into that. Like, the idea of climbing a fence, is like, that's just too much work. I'm not one to put in the effort like that. Life or death, honestly. I want to put in the effort to climb a fence, really. But I was just like, damn! You know what I mean? Because sometimes I look at that and I go, okay, I was a little cuckoo, but I definitely wasn't that crazy. No offense to that girl. But, you know, it's like, hey guys, why were we climbing the fence for One Direction? Really crazy. Is there something, like, that's what I say too, is there like more deconstructing to do of the fact that there are people who could become so obsessive, they would chase people down, or like when they're like in the car and the fans surround the car, like, I just go, what are you expecting to happen though? It's where my confusion lies. Like, I get wanting to see a glimpse of them. I can see how that can translate to that. But I just go like, what? Like, damn, we're climbing a fence? What? Girls, I don't know what's going on. Like I said, I can't picture climbing a fence. I wouldn't even know how to climb a fence. But I definitely wouldn't, because like I said, at that point, hey, never mind. But yeah, it's very interesting, the different levels of parasocial that there is. And some people really be going overboard with it. They really do. But it's so interesting to me when I go, so if you really like this person, right? And in your greatest delusions, right? Where people are like, that should be me held in your hand, right? Let's bring the beeves into that, right? Can you imagine? Like I said, we're playing into the person's delusions right now. That should be me making you laugh, right? If someone says, hey, I don't like this, right? If they don't like you, they're gonna leave, right? Now, not everybody, you know, in the way that so many people have been conditioned to just mutter through life, right? And take things as they are and not question things and not, you know, do things that help them stay true to who they are and who they would like to be and their values, right? Some people just think, well, I have to settle and I stay where I am and life is what it is, right? Instead of life, what you make it, so let's make it rock. Not everyone is like that, right? So your celebrity people, your celebrity crushes, your celebrity dream men are not like that. So if you act up, they're gonna peace out, just as if you were two regular people who were seeing each other and you acted crazy and they said, well, I don't tolerate that shit, so peace out. You know what I mean? So I just go like, even in your wildest delusions, if someone says they don't like something, why is it that you are so bent on to keep doing it? Because you want that. And so that's really reached into a point where it's like, okay, maybe I need to have a healthier relationship to this person. But then, like I said, like, it's just like you're continuously crossing boundaries that were set, and you expect to get the same same or better results, right? Of closeness to that person. That doesn't make, I literally cannot logic into where their illogical brain is at. Right? So I don't know. I don't know. It's very interesting to me. I don't understand that literally at all. Because there's the point of parasocial, right? Where we're like, these men are beautiful. Like, if this man stopped me on the street, honey, whatever you say. Right? But I just go, there is a point where we have to be rooted in realism. Because I'm not going to sit here and say, I wouldn't say, you know, if this person came up to me, hey, whatever. Hey, fuck that band, okay? If that means if I could be with that person, sure, why not? Sure, why not? I said that. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I haven't said that. But as you get older and you really think about it, I think the most important and grounding work people can do is go, I don't think you're compatible in the way you think you are with the celebrity men you obsess over. And here's the thing, maybe you could be. And I'm not trying to say that to feed delusions. I don't think this is a good way to go. You know what I mean? In the way that people go, what's a celebrity do you think, like, you were in a room with them, you could woo them? You know what I mean? So it's fun. It's fun. I love a good daydream. Hey, heyitsris, come sit with me in your fantasy. And that's where it's going to stay. And that's where it's going to stay. And you have to recognize that. You know what I mean? At what point are you, like, doing too much? And that these are people, and yes, you find that man sexy, but what are you going to do about it? You know what I mean? You're going to do nothing. You're just going to just be nice and supportive and say like, wow, you're a wonderful person. You have a beautiful smile. I hope you live a life of nothing but happiness and joy, and you get to accomplish everything you want to accomplish. But I will never know you like that. You know what I mean? The people who take it a step too far, I just go like, guys, that's not going to be you. You can just sit at home and say, that should be me. Oh, hey. If I was on The Voice, nobody's turning their chair for me. I'm not a singer. I wish I was. I'm really jealous of people who can sing. So if you can sing, you gotta sing. If you can sing, you gotta sing. I wish I could sing. I wish I could sing, but I cannot. As you heard, you can yearn at home, but yearn respectfully to the point where you don't go cuckoo bananas and start crossing boundaries of these people, these celebrity people who you will really never know. And I also go like I said, the most grounding thing, you could be like, I really like them. I really enjoy their personality. Maybe in another world you would be friends. Maybe in another world, okay? Let's play the delusion. Maybe in another world you'd have a beautiful life with them. I don't know what to tell you. I'm not saying I don't think about that too, because I do. But respectfully, in a way that I know that that's not going to happen, okay? So, you know, but I just go like, here's what gets me. The people who are like, if you have been a fan, let's say, of this band for a long time, right? Like, let's take One Direction, right? Your impactful years have to do with One Direction, right? You know, there's already an imbalance of what you know, right? Like, you know more about them than they know about you. And granted, there's more to learn about them because we don't know 100% of everyone. But you know what I mean? There's just such an imbalance there. And there's also a power imbalance between you and them, right? So if they're not a good person, that could go astray. You know what I mean? In the way that some people can take advantage of their fans in that way, right? At least some have, you know, the decency to be like, hey, thank you for your support, but it's not going to happen. But I go, so let's flash forward to, you know, now One Direction's over. You meet Niall out on the street. Does that even make sense that he would, now, if he was smart, he wouldn't do that. And I can't imagine he's going to do that anyway. But I just say, okay, so here's the thing. If that, hey, maybe you go and you meet and he doesn't give a fuck about that and you live a beautiful life. Okay, whatever, prove me wrong. I don't know anything about anything apparently. But I just go like, if that relationship is not good or ends, like, do you care more about like the fun and connection that you have to that thing? Or do you care more about being with that person? I guess is like my question. Because I go like, I don't know, like I care more about the thing, you know what I mean? I would be like, wow, this has been so impactful in my life. It has carried me through so many aspects of my life. That's what I said. There's just an imbalance. It could never be even, because how could it be, right? Let's say like a Jonas Brother. I don't know. And I'm trying to think, like, I think that's the band I've liked the longest. So that's why I say that. And I'm not trying to get with a Jonas. I actually don't want to date a Jonas, believe it or not. Not anymore. Back in the day, I was a Nick girl. Obviously, I swayed to Joe. At times, and they're beautiful people, but that's it. That's all I got to say on that. You know what I mean? I don't care. I don't want to date a Jonas Brother even if I could. You know, like, it's just so funny. Like, and hey, if you would, love that for you. If you said one night with Joe Jonas, hey, take me away, hey, you go, girl. You go, girl. I'm not trying to take that away from you. But I just go like, I appreciate the other stuff more, that I wouldn't want to ruin it by doing that. You know what I mean? Because I also wonder if there's anyone that's like hooked up with an artist and then still decided to go to their concert. To me, that would be the really weird part. But anyways, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's interesting, the different levels of parasocialness that exist throughout all of these things. It's an interesting thing. It's an interesting thing. So one thing I want to address that I said in my last video, that maybe you'll think I'll sound like a hypocrite. Hey, whatever. We're all hypocrites in life. What do you want me to say? What do you want me to say? is that I was saying, you know, I think as you're deconstructing patriarchy and understanding how, you know, that seeps into the fangirl life, you are acknowledging that things, you don't interact with things the same way. And I do still believe that. And what I said was, there was this high that you were on, like back in the One Direction days, back in, you know, the big time, like I would just watch the videos and concert videos continuously, and it would really put me on a high. Gets us through life. I think that's like part of the reason why we have like such a deep connection, and why it can be harder for us to let go in instances, right? Where there's this high that you feel, right? And that carries us, this comfort, it carries us through life. It is like how we cope, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I want to be clear. Like, I just think it's good for us to evaluate all of these things and how that affects us. And that's all I really want us to do, and deconstruct maybe the ways we could be maybe having a healthier relationship to it. And like I said, can that exist in this realm? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that yet. I think it's okay to not know the answer. It's just something to talk about. But I say, I don't feel the high anymore. And I said, I feel like any deprogramming is going to feel like that, right? It's going to feel different. You're not, going to feel things in the same way as you once did. It's going to be different. And maybe you have to find your footing to find what that new version looks like. And that can be difficult. So I was saying, I don't experience a high anymore. And the one thing is, I loved so many artists back in the day. I was very much a person who it's not that I don't know other songs. Like I knew Top Farty was what I was going to say. 40, not farty. So it's not like I'm unaware of the other things that are going on. But I was very much, I'm very obsessive in nature, and that just is what it is. That is what it is, you know? It's the truth. It's the truth. That's why I like to evaluate these things, to keep myself grounded. But I think about the fact that I really was just like, I cannot get into any more artists, because if I get into the artists, I'm gonna want to go to the concert, and I don't have money to see everybody, so I might as well not get into everybody. And I didn't get to see everybody. I got to see a lot of people. I'm very privileged in that way. I'm very grateful for all the concerts that I've been to in my lifetime, especially in the time where they existed, right? And none of these things, my relationship to these things have changed. They're always nostalgic to me, but, I'm not, as big of a fan of some people as I used to be, even if they're still doing stuff now. And some bands don't exist anymore, and things have changed. Things have changed, as I've spoken about earlier, right? So now I'm to the point where it's like, I'm very into TV shows. I'm more so of a TV show person than a movie person. So I have my obsession, Buffy. I don't know. I'm moving. If you're on the video, you can see my Buffy bookshelf, but I have a Buffy collection that I adore, and I have so much Buffy fan art in my living room that I adore. And it brings me joy, Buffy the Vampire Slayer truly changed my life, but we can't get into that today. So it's interesting having less obsessions. It really forces you to do other things, which is a good thing, and I also think it forces you to evaluate more things now that you have the time. Now that you're not so clocked in with so many other things, you finally have time to evaluate other things, and it's a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful thing. But I was just like, I didn't really have anything. I didn't really have anybody, because my relationship to that stuff has changed a little bit. I was finding it hard to I do, it's just I'm not as into people as much, the process is much different for me now. I still the qualities of it are still the same, but the process is much different, if that makes sense. And there's just less people, you know what I mean? Like I said, the people that I used to be a fan of have dwindled down for various reasons. And also, so it's like, I really don't have that many artists to go to shows to anymore, right? So what changed? I listened to a group called Stray Kids, one of my sister's favorite K-pop groups, for those unfamiliar. And I've listened to their music. My sister has recommended me K-pop, throughout time, and I just listen casually. I have actually, I was someone who I couldn't be casual about things, but I actually have gotten way better about being casual about things. But also, like I said earlier, I am obsessive by nature. When I tell you I have been forced to watch videos of Stray Kids and other groups, and ATs, which I will get into, for so long now. And it was never clicked. It never clicked for me. I watched, I enjoyed, I didn't hate watching the videos. I had fun watching the videos too, but it was like, okay, I watched it and move on. Right? Just a casual listener, If my sister wanted to watch a Stray Kids video, we'd watch it. It is not for lack of effort that she tried to get me into K-pop. It is not for lack of effort, okay? I have become a casual listener, truly, in a way that I never thought was possible. Like I said, I'm very obsessive by nature. That is just my truth. So I got into a good chunk of the music. Obviously, I don't know everything, and I'm still learning. And so, I said, okay, I want to come to the Stray Kids concert with you, right? And I thought I was just going to have fun. And like I said, I usually, because it costs so much money, I missed it. Hey, back in the day, $30 for a bad One Direction seat, okay? You can't even get a ticket for $30 these days, okay? $80 used to get you a good seat on the lower level of an arena, okay? Like, let's talk about the inflation between the Ariana Grande tours, where one tour I paid $80, the next tour I paid like $250 for the same kind of seat. Oh my God, it's even worse now. And K-pop? And K-pop? Oh guys, I'm so sorry. Like, capitalism really got you guys. I'm so sorry. And it's getting me. It's getting me. I'm trying to resist, but it's getting me. I'm not even gonna lie. So I went to a Stray Kids show. They're so fucking good live, guys. And after I saw that, it had to marinate. Like, I was like, wow, I just had a wonderful time. Like, I think I'm really gonna be into it. Like, I don't know. I was just blown away. And, something shifted in City Fields. Something shifted for the better. My life was forever changed in that City Fields. And I was just like, they are so good. They are so fun together. And I was like, damn, these guys are great. I'm really going to get into Stray Kids. And I was like, yeah, Stray Kids, right? And so at this time, for reference, one of the other groups my sister had suggested for me to listen to a while back was heyitsris. And she, had known heyitsris, but although she doesn't know all the lore, she was a fan. And she wasn't always clocked in, but she was a fan. To the point where, we were like, okay, we definitely want to go to an heyitsris concert. Like, I enjoyed the music. In 2024, they were my second most played artist to Luis Miguel, who random Mexican singer that I got into. Beautiful voice, highly suggest. He's like Mariah Carey's age for reference. The only people who care about Luis Miguel are like me and 50-plus-year-old Latinas, okay? But I'm not getting into Luis Miguel today, but love Luis Miguel. That's my boy right there. Beautiful, beautiful voice, incredible discography, highly suggest, okay? Back to heyitsris. We were already like, you know what, let's go to see heyitsris, right? Because I'm very much of the fact where I'm like, okay, so let me go see concerts of people that I casually enjoy. And it's hard to be like, let me do that, right? Because back in the day, it used to be so much, it's still, even though it was cheaper, it was still a lot of money to go see people, right? So I was just like, I want to dedicate my money to people that I really am obsessed with, right? I'm not going to go casually spend a lot of money on people that maybe I listen to, but I don't really care about, right? That I don't know anything about personally. The heyitsris, I was like, heyitsris has been on my play for about 2 to 3 years, right? To the point where, like I said, they became my second most played artist, and I know nothing about them. Not for lack of my sister trying to show me heyitsris videos, don't get me wrong. I don't know. I can't say what didn't click, okay? Even before these K-pop concerts, right? I went to the Towards the Light heyitsris movie. Guys, I was like, great performance, right? Hongjoong was blonde at the time, and I don't know, I couldn't tell what I was feeling about Hongjoong. I was just like, damn, he's good. He really commands the stage. He's the captain of heyitsris, for those who don't know. And I was just blown away by him. I don't remember what I thought about the other members. Unfortunately, that has escaped me. But I was like, damn, they put on a fucking show. And also, they have great music, as you know, I enjoy. And Jongho with those vocals for everything, I was like, damn. Like, y'all, listen to everything by heyitsris. Like, Jongho can fucking sing. He can sing, right? But even that did not get me to go, let me investigate these guys. So really, I say, I owe it to Stray Kids. Seeing their show really opens my world in a way that I didn't expect it to be opened. I really didn't. Not for lack of effort, trying to get me into these things, don't get me wrong. So I'm like, okay, if I have this much love for Stray Kids after seeing the show, I know that I want to get to know as much about heyitsris as possible before the concert, okay? Because I already listened to the music, although there was more music to listen to, of course, as there always is. I need to clock the fuck in. When I tell you I have consumed so much heyitsris content in such a short amount of time. Like, truly such a short amount of time. Like, in 2 weeks, I probably had, between those concerts, like, girl, I was clocked in a way that was, like, concerning. Like, eat, sleep, work, 80s. That was it. And it took me a while to kind of figure out who my bias was. By the way, if you're curious, my bias in Stray Kids is Chan. And it took me a while because I am very much, like, they're fun. I enjoy their music. Like I said, I really enjoy their live performances. They put on an incredible performance, okay? Even if you don't become obsessed with ATs, they're worth the money, to be honest, to just go to a show, really. But I was like, I need to know personality. That is really what gets me. I think it reminds me of, like, the One Direction days where they had all the video diaries, or they have the weird challenges that they would do. And, you know, 2012, I was locked into just watching One Direction content in such a way that was like, probably I was doing nothing else with my summer but doing that. So it just reminded me of that. And I like that energy of a group of guys. There's no toxic masculinity there. They really do love and care for each other. They're so funny. And they're so, like, you like them, you just adore them as people. And that is really what made me fall in love with ATs, right? Like, I already enjoyed their music. I enjoyed their performances. But getting to know them, you know, a little bit about them as people really is what, like, damn, these are great guys. Like, oh, I love that. Like, y'all, the way I fast tracked getting locked in on ATs for real, right? Hey, hold on. This is my ATs jersey. My bias is Ooyoung. Hey, here's my emotional support man on a piece of paper. I'm no better, guys. You know, I talk about this because I want us to think about the ways we interact with things and that we are all the same. Even if we change, we always stay the same, right? I mean, guys, I didn't think after what happened with Big Time Rush becoming problematic, you know, they were my emotional support boy band, truly carried me through so many dark times of life. I'll always be grateful for. After that being ruined, I wasn't sure that there was going to be another boy band. But here we are. Okay? They really do seem like genuine people. But also, I wanted to talk about this because how do you balance between here's a new group I like, and how do we have a normal relationship to that? I'm obsessed. Don't get me wrong. I'm obsessed. Like, sometimes I forget and I'm like, you know, I was making some TikToks about ATs and I'm like, by the way, I've been here for a month. The party started, like, I don't know, 7 years ago, and I just got here. You know what I'm saying? But it is interesting to think about because I like to keep grounded, and I like to keep all of this in mind when I talk about, you know, existing in fangirl spaces and what that looks like and how we can be deconstructing patriarchy in all of these places. And I think one of those things to keep us grounded is to recognize, whilst I watch these people and I adore them, and they seem like genuine, wonderful people, I do not know these people personally. It is not to say that if you were to know them, they would be bad. That is not what I'm saying. But we also have to be grounded in a reality to be like, I don't actually know these people, right? There has to be a balance of those things. And I think that can be difficult for some people to manage. And at the end of the day, this is a random man on a piece of paper that I didn't care about 2 months ago. So when I said, am I going to sound like a hypocrite? Maybe I do. But I think it's important to talk about all the different things. And I wanted to share that because I just thought, even between posting that and then going to the 80s concert, I was thinking about that. I'm like, oh no, am I a hypocrite now? I don't know. Maybe I am. Who cares? It's not the end of the world, is it? Is it the end of the world to be a hypocrite? I don't think it is. But also, I'd like to say, you know, my relationship to fangirling, although many things stay the same, things change. You know what I mean? I do recognize, I don't know these men. I don't know these men. Beautiful, beautiful men. Beautiful men. Truly, truly. Like, I don't know. ATs are green flags to me. As I said, we project these things onto them and go, they're green flags. They just seem so genuine. And they are. And we don't, but we also understand we don't know them. We don't know them. But one thing you can trust, if somebody acts up, I'm going to peace out. that's the one thing I hope to stay true to in staying true to my values. Like, that is just really what you gotta do. And I like to say this because we have to think about the ways that it exists in our life, and it exists in fan spaces. And as someone who is obsessed, hey, by the way, within a couple weeks of getting into ATs, dropped $90. $90.